What's up, everyone? I'm Ian McCarthy of Lifting for Life, and today I'd like to do something similar to what I've been doing recently, but I've never done in exactly this form before. On my last video, I received a question which really struck me as just unlike any question I had received before and worthy of some discussion. So what I did was I dedicated some time to writing a response, which I'd like to read to you, given my videos in which I've read to you have been more concise. So here's the question, and I'm realizing that I didn't write down who asked it, so you know who you are, and thank you for the question. Any idea why the online fitness YouTube thing is of such a high quality? It seems like you've got top-level experts as well as charismatic autodidacts and amateurs giving you all the information you need to get a world-class, or at least your genetic limit, level in the strength or physique sport of your choice. If there had been a percentile of the same information as readily available and of the same quality in any kind of art, this period would be spoken of as its real start or great beginning. First of all, I think there's a lot to be said for the fact so many people are interested in fitness, and more importantly in this context, so many people put out fitness content. The implication of this is pretty straightforward. There are a lot of chances for folks to get things right. As an analogy, the likelihood of any one person winning the lottery is extremely low, but so many people play that someone always wins, even if it takes a while. By the same token, although the lottery example is admittedly more extreme, with hundreds of thousands or even millions of people putting out fitness content, you end up with a lot of experts, even if any one person probably has a low likelihood of becoming an expert. To view it through the lens of the content itself, even if most of it is low quality, when you have an overwhelming amount of it, you end up with a lot of good stuff. An important part of this phenomenon is the fact that those who are interested in fitness are generally also interested in social media. From the analytics I've seen, over 50% of the followers of channels and pages about fitness and bodybuilding are males between the ages of 18 and 24. Admittedly, I'm not sure if anyone is in a position to assess the demographics of the entire fitness industry with confidence, but honestly, the only big block of the industry I could see being relatively uninvolved in social media is middle-aged women, and I could very easily be wrong about that, given that social media is very much not only a young person's game. I'm realizing that it was assumed that males between the ages of 18 and 24 are interested in social media. Again, this isn't really a distinct point, but I sense it's a huge contributor to the sheer quantity of content we see, which then gives us the good content. I also get the impression that consumers of fitness content have become more discerning. When I started making videos in 2011, my perception was that there was very little in terms of natural pushback to misinformation, or an expectation that content producers present good evidence for their claims. To be clear, I don't say this thinking that I'm the one guy who gets to judge this, but what I described was my honest assessment, and in hindsight, I think I was about right. As a bit of an aside, I think this was a big part of why I was more overtly critical back in the day. I felt that in the absence of a community with a very clear expectation of evidence, someone needed to really shake things up to bring that about. Nowadays, I've become very impressed with the average level of critical thinking on the part of the community as a whole, and I also think there's something to be said for the general level of knowledge having risen considerably. Although I don't personally consume much YouTube fitness content, when I occasionally check out a comment section on someone else's video, I'm usually struck by how self-correcting it seems to be. To give an example, and I'll name names on this one as it's not a criticism, if someone asks a question in the comment section of an Omar Isuf video, there might be one response which is clearly wrong, but then 5 which correct it. This might just be a matter of my perception, but I don't remember that being the norm 5 or so years ago. In a similar vein, it's my perception that there's a healthy level of competition among content producers, which encourages them to make their content more evidence-based. When I started out, there was a lot of interaction between producers, but to be quite honest, the content itself felt pretty random and not the result of a systematic evidence-based approach. Today, evidence-based has become, I put quotes so I have to do them in the video, has become such a desirable slogan that huge numbers of people shoot for it, and although many fail, many who might not have even known of the concept years ago are now at least in the neighborhood of it. I'm deliberately leaving aside the question of what exactly it means to be evidence-based. If you're interested in that, I'd refer you to the evidence-based roundtable here on my channel. Admittedly, some of the changes which have happened in the YouTube fitness community are neither here nor there in terms of the quality of the recommendations themselves. For example, I'd say the rise of vlogging is a neutral change, but I think there's an effort to combine those changes with evidence-based practice, and I'm not sure we would have seen that had there not first been the shift toward expecting evidence. Finally, I think it's enormously helpful that scientists themselves are accessible to a degree I've never seen before, and I see this taking two forms. The first is that of the science educator, and the second is the professional scientist. In my mind, good examples of these are Eric Helms and Stu Phillips, respectively. To be clear, Eric is a published scientist, and while I have absolutely no desire to diminish that, my sense is that he's best understood as someone committed to propagating an evidence-based fitness perspective. In other words, doing that publicly, as opposed to being someone who's primarily in the lab collecting data and publishing, and who perhaps focuses secondarily on distributing that information. On the other hand, Stu Phillips publishes more fitness-related research than anyone else I can think of, and although, to be sure, he is present on social media, in fact, much more than many scientists, it seems to me that project is secondary to his research. Again, nothing I've said here is intended to be a criticism of either of these two men. Rather, I want to illustrate the way in which I see scientists interacting with the broader community, and the central point here is that through that interaction, scientists raise the bar higher than it would be if the production of social media content rested entirely on folks like me. On a final note, I do want to say for the sake of completeness that I don't think things are ideal. I still see a lot of misinformation, and sometimes it does slip through largely unchallenged, and that is a problem. One particular issue I've noticed recently is what seems to me to be an insufficient understanding of the scientific literature on the part of social media content creators, even those who are sincerely trying to offer a scientific perspective, and that can be hard to contain if the audience itself doesn't usually interact with the literature. However, I do think the community is much more substantive than it used to be, and I would encourage creators to continue doing their best to disseminate evidence-based content, and I would encourage consumers to continue seeking that content out and asking questions. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you found any value in this video, please do like it. Please do share it with anyone who you think might benefit from it, and keep seeking out evidence-based content and asking questions, and perhaps I can make more videos like this about those questions in the future. Thanks again. I'll see you soon.